Welcome to today's Explainer. When you stop and really look at the sheer massive scale of modern offshore drilling and global shipping, it's honestly incredibly easy to feel a little overwhelmed by the potential for an environmental disaster. But the truth is, safety and environmental professionals, they don't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. No way. They rely on incredibly rigorous, uncompromising structures. So today, we're going to unpack the definitive framework used to do exactly that, the 6 steps of oil spill risk assessment management. If you've ever wondered how experts approach these massive, complex environmental challenges with a cool head and a totally clear plan, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's dive in.
So, how do we actually manage the unthinkable? When you picture an oil spill, I bet you picture total chaos, right? A fast-moving crisis that just seemingly defies all control. But for safety planners and risk managers, panic is literally not an option. They have to figure out how to turn that chaotic, overwhelming threat into a highly methodical, actionable, and repeatable plan. And honestly, this hits the nail on the head regarding the exact purpose of a risk assessment. It's about taking that dark, scary unknown of a potential disaster and systematically breaking it down into bite-sized, understandable pieces. And that brings us to the core of our source material today. What we're really looking at here is essentially a sequential shield. The framework for conducting a risk assessment generally follows 6 foundational steps to assess and manage these environmental threats. Now, the absolutely crucial word here is sequential. It's like a giant puzzle. You can't just jump to the end. Actually, scratch that, you can't even skip the middle. This framework is strictly sequential. Think about it. You can't calculate the damage of a spill if you haven't even identified what kind of oil is leaking yet, right? Each step is carefully designed to lay the critical foundation for the next. This isn't just a casual list of suggestions. It's a rigorous architecture used to tame environmental chaos and bring actual order to hazard management.
Okay, so here is the complete roadmap. Step 1, plan the risk assessment. Step 2, analyze hazards. Step 3, analyze probability. Step 4, analyze consequences. Step 5, characterize risks. And finally, Step 6, manage the risks. Just hearing that progression, you can immediately feel the logic. It's a clear journey from pure preparation all the way to active management. Let's start right at the very beginning and see exactly how the mechanics of environmental protection actually work on a procedural level. The big takeaway here is groundwork and identification. Step 1 is planning the risk assessment. Look, before a single piece of data is even looked at, planners have to define the scope, the resources, and the overall objectives of the assessment itself. You just can't rush in blind. And that feeds directly into Step 2, analyze hazards. The source material specifically breaks this second step down into 2 really vital actions. First, you must identify the scenarios, and then you have to explicitly describe them. It is simply not enough to just say, well, an oil spill might happen. You have to bring the unknown into the light. Are we dealing with a slow pipeline leak of heavy crude, or are we talking about a massive tanker collision spilling refined diesel? You have to explicitly describe the hazard's chemical properties and its location before you can ever hope to fight it. So, once we have successfully identified and described our specific oil spill scenarios, we run into a new challenge. Having a big list of potential hazards is great and all, but how do we know which ones to prioritize? How do we measure the actual, real-world danger of these scenarios?
This brings us right to the analytical core of the framework. You see, risk is essentially a 2-sided coin. On one side, we have Step 3, analyze the probability of spill scenarios. We have to figure out the likelihood. Is this scenario a 1 in a million freak occurrence, or is it highly likely given the current operational conditions? But probability alone just doesn't cut it. On the other side of that coin, we have to simultaneously execute Step 4, analyze the consequences of spill scenarios. Because if this spill does happen, what is the exact catastrophic damage it's going to cause? Will it completely devastate a fragile local coral reef, or will it just dissipate out in open waters? By contrasting the likelihood of a spill against its potential damage, safety planners calculate the true weight of the threat. A highly probable spill with very minor consequences is handled totally differently than a highly improbable spill with world-altering consequences. You absolutely must analyze both sides of the coin.
And once we've rigorously analyzed both the probability and those consequences, we arrive at Step 5, characterize the risks. This is the moment of synthesis. This is where you map the likelihood against the severity to generate a definitive risk profile, literally labeling scenarios as low, medium, or critical threats. It's that vital transition from just having piles and piles of analytical data to forming a complete, clear, and actionable picture of the threat. Characterizing the risk means you finally have a crystal clear picture of the enemy you're facing. Okay, so we've planned, we've identified the hazards, we've analyzed the probability and the consequences, and we've fully characterized the exact risks of our scenarios. We have all the intelligence. But information alone cannot stop an oil spill. All of this meticulous procedural work has to lead somewhere, right? So what actually happens once the risks are fully characterized? Boom. Step 6. Manage the risks. This is the climactic takeaway. All the planning, all the analysis, all that careful characterization, it all culminates right here. Managing the risk means putting actual physical safeguards into place. We're talking about upgrading to double-hold shipping routes, pre-deploying containment booms, or maybe completely overhauling operational procedures. It is the empowering step where planners take active, physical control of the threat. The whole framework is designed to ensure that when it finally comes time to manage the risk, the actions you take aren't based on guesswork or panic. They're built on a rock-solid foundation of systematic analysis.
Because at the end of the day, identification is meaningless without action. The 6 steps of oil spill risk assessment management show us that while it is absolutely vital to plan, analyze, and characterize, the ultimate goal is always active environmental protection. It's a really powerful reminder that assessing a problem is only half the battle. So I'll leave you with this. When you're facing complex threats in your own systems, are you stopping at the analysis, or are you truly prepared to manage the risk? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.